Thank you, choir. And it reminds us that in the uncertainties of life, when it may feel like the ground that we're walking on is shifting and moving back and forth and perhaps sometimes giving way out from under us, there is that rock of Jesus on which we can stand. And all of us need that reminder. You know, your job may change, relationships may change, where you live. You may be given some new task that you don't know if you're up to it or not. And there you go. Even in our own local congregation, people have been asking me about this St. Mark's St. Mark's United Methodist Church new arrangement, and it feels kind of uncertain because we're not sure what that's going to look like. People have said, well, they have worship at 10:30, we have worship at 10:30. Are they expecting you to preach simultaneously at both places? If I could split myself and pull that off, you better believe I'm going to do that, because that would be really cool. But I can't do that, and so no, that's not what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to all work out or what they're even going to want to do, and we're very, very curious about all of it. But what I do know is that Jesus is the one to stand on in the midst of any uncertain times. So for you yourself, are you standing on Jesus in the midst of what's going on in your own personal life? And it's an interesting question. It's kind of an old school way to live. You know, maybe your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa lived that way. But sometimes we don't like the old ways. You know, we want to try something new. So let me ask you a question. If I were to offer you something and not tell you what that something was, and to say you can have the old something or the new something, which one would you get more excited about? And if in your mind you're thinking, well, it would depend on what it is, then you're probably age-wise a little older than some of the other folks. And I'm in that category. I'd be like, well, it depends on what it is. Terminator, Speed, The Matrix. Give me the old originals, because the second ones, the sequels, were terrible, weren't they, Janine? I mean, you know movies. They were terrible, right? The movie Rocky. How many of you saw Rocky 1? How many of you saw Rocky 2? About half, right? Yeah. Did you love Rocky 1 or Rocky 2? When I say the word Rocky, which one do you think of? Rocky 1, yeah, the original, the old one. I like that, right? Coca-Cola. Many of the younger generation folks, they only know of one version of Coca-Cola, and now they're kind of coming out with some different, flavors or whatever. But some of you remember New Coke, 1980-something. How did that go over? It was terrible. That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it almost tanked the whole company. It was like a terrible idea. The new was bad. In morality and relationships, sometimes we try new approaches, and we're like, we heard it was done this way, but let's try it this way. Let's try this over here. Oh, that sounds fun. Let's try this and try this. And we try all these things, and then sometimes we come back to saying, wait, great-grandma was right. Like, that was right. I should have done it that way. The old way was right. Many, many, many times. Not every time, but many times that's the case. And when Jesus himself was asked 2,000 years ago, what are the most important things to do? He went old school and quoted the Old Testament. And so the passage I'm going to begin with today was one of those kind of two passages that he said, this is the most important thing for people to do. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Now, even when Jesus quoted that was like over 1,000 years old. That wisdom was maybe 1,500, maybe older than that years old, which for us then makes it more than 3,000 years old wisdom. But does that work? Is that a good way to live? Yeah, if you don't do that, things fall apart. Have you ever tried to hold a grudge and been like, I'm going to hold this grudge as long as I possibly can, and then try to get revenge on that person? Have you ever tried that? I'm not recommending it. But people do that all the time, and we may struggle with that. And you know what that does to us. It eats us up. And sometimes that'll mess up our digestion, and it may hurt our other relationships. We're mad at person A, then we're around person B, C, D, F, and as we interact with these folks, we're not the same, and we're angry or we lash out when we don't have a problem with them, it's with this other person. And it's like, wait a second. great-great-great-great-great-grandmas, and you keep going back great, right? Advice of this, love your neighbor as yourself, works. It's perfect. It's good. Now, quick question. You'll know the answer, but you're not going to like the answer. Who in our lives are we most likely to break this command with, or on, or against? It's our closest family, right? I mean, you know what? We can put up a good front, out and about, that kind of stuff, and then you get home, and then you're around that same person all the time, and then do we love them as much as we love ourselves? Sometimes no. Sometimes we take it out on them. Quick question. Another question. You're not going to like the answer to this one either, but I think you'll agree with it. Statistically, who is the most likely person that I will take to court? Your spouse, right? I mean, it's not even close. Like, most of us will never take somebody else to court, but statistically speaking, the most likely person that a married person is going to take to court is their spouse, the one that they stood before God in this company and said, in a covenant relationship with God and that person, I will love you. How does it go? I've done this like 1,000 times. To love and to cherish till death us do part, right? You say for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, right? So we covenant together, and yet that is the most likely person you're going to take to court, or that will take you to court. Now, even, and this is what bothers me as a church dude, even among those that call themselves Christians, statistically speaking, calling ourselves that makes no difference. In fact, in certain groups of Christians, we have an even worse track record of working it out, loving each other like that, than anybody else. Like, no joke. Do the math, look up the statistics. It's horrifying. So what a great opportunity for us as Columbia Heights people to say, with us, forget about the past, right? The past is the past. Going forward, we're going to live this out. We're going to live this out because this works. This is the best way to live. Young people that are here, other folks that may give marriage another try, this is the way we're going to do it. Love your neighbor as yourself. That means that when that person has a need and you have a want, it means you put that person's need above your want. Amen? Have you known people who had marriages that lasted a long time that at some point in time, one or the other of them got really, really sick or had some horrible thing happen to them or they lost a limb or something like that, and that couple, the other person said, your need right now is more important than my want. I will be there for you. I will be by your side. I will make sure that you're fed. I will make sure you're cared for. Have you seen people live like that in a marriage? I have. Have you ever known any of them, once they got through that, have you ever known any of them say, that wasn't worth it, that was stupid, why'd I ever do that? Why'd we work it out? I've never seen that happen, right? Isn't that interesting? We know this works. We know it's beautiful. It just takes us saying, you know what? For us and our household, from here on out, past is past. We're not trying to bring, guilt and judgment upon people. We're saying, new day, new day. For us and our household, we're going to live this out because this works. It's better. It's better than the alternatives that we are trying or that we're trying to do. No. Your need is more important than my want. And then the other person is saying the same thing. And then all of a sudden, that has a ripple down effect that will bless person after person, generation after generation. You know it's true because you also know the opposite is true. When somebody's abusive, all of a sudden, statistically, the kids may be abusive. Their kids may be abusive. You know what I mean? Like hurt. Or even just, the dysfunctional ways of working stuff out and just kind of getting at each other, holding grudges, and then the kids hold grudges, and then their grandkids hold grudges, and it just becomes this insidious thing. No. Let's not do that. Let's do the opposite, where we say, no, we will covenant together to always love one another in this particular way. You get it. Some interesting scripture passages that go right along with that. 1 Timothy 5:8. We probably, I could see us all getting tattoos. Those of us that get married, we could get these tattoos, all matching tattoos, Wouldn't this be amazing? You're like, I don't know. Tell me what it is. 1 Timothy 5:8. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Whoo, that's crazy. So in the New Testament, you know that every single New Testament author does not think that being an unbeliever is a good thing. Right? You know that's bad. In this particular translation, you can translate unbeliever, infidel. Now that's kind of interesting because there are other religions that use the word infidel. In our religious tradition, an infidel is somebody, in this case, who says that they're a Christian, but who sees their family member in need, and they can meet the need, but they decide not to because their wants are more important than that person's needs. And that's even worse than saying, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in Jesus. Isn't that crazy? But we see the power of that. Now, we're not talking about being manipulated, somebody's putting false guilt on us. They have expectations that are not realistic. We can't really meet them, and so now we feel bad about ourselves. No, we're not talking about that. We're saying when they have a legitimate need, and we call ourselves a Christian, and we can meet that need. We have the material possessions, we have the food, we have the love to give, we have the emotional support to give. If we have it to give, and they need it, it's absolutely essential that we meet that. Otherwise, we're showing that in our hearts, we don't really believe in Jesus. And when we receive communion, we don't really buy it. We're not really into it. Because our wants are number one, their needs then become secondary, and we've denied the faith. That's old school living, but man, that's true. Genesis chapter 2. So now let's go husband, wife, and then let's go to the kids. I know some of you want to go to the kids first. Let's just wait just a second here. Let's go to husband and wife. Genesis chapter 2. Vision of kind of a marriage relationship. Here we go. Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave unto his wife. I use the old King James translation here. I love that. Shall leave and cleave. And some of you remember growing up hearing that phrase, leave and cleave? Maybe not. I did, and it makes sense. I'll show you how in just a second. Shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be two separate people with different wants, and they just kind of go at it and try to, one-up each other, and, that's not what it says, is it? Shall be one flesh. What one does, the other is doing. The other one doing it, the other one's doing it. They're together, trying to do things together, supporting one another. Now, what does the leave and cleave mean? Some of you old-timers, I bet, heard it kind of described like this. Like when the wife leaves her family to be one with her husband, and the husband leaves his family, and then something breaks, something goes wrong, they're having some kind of a problem. If they haven't left and cleft, I have no idea if that's a real word or not, but I'm making it up. If they haven't left and cleft, then you know what happens? Daddy, can you come help me with this because it broke and I just don't think my husband can fix it. And the husband's over there going, Mom, can you come make a pie because my wife, man, this stuff is terrible and I just need some good home cooking. Did they really leave and cleave? No. Is that good for a marriage when that stuff happens? No, it's not. Is it tempting? Well, of course, because you've had years of relying on those other family members and stuff. And that was kind of a stereotypical kind of thing to describe it, but it's just making an illustration. You're supposed to leave, you cleave, one. Now, who's the most important thing in your life other than God? God's number one. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. We know that. Who's the most important person in your life? It's not your boss. It's not your customers. It's not your kids. It's your spouse. That's exactly right. That's the way it works. You rely on them. Why? Because that's the one person you've covenanted before God with. That's the one person that you're now one with. And yes, you can call on the others for help if you together have decided that's a necessity. You know what I mean? That's weird. But does it help? Does it make your marriage stronger? Yeah. And is it honoring? Yeah. I mean, it is. I know it sounds old school. You can debate it, over lunch or whatever. Husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. Ephesians 5:28. What? She's a separate person. We're individuals. I should not worry about her like that. Yeah. This is Ephesians 5:28. He who loves his wife loves who? Himself. You mistreat your wife, you're mistreating yourself. God's looking down going, why? Why are you doing this? This is the one person in your whole life that you've committed yourself to saying you're the most important person. Ephesians 5:33, the wife must respect her husband. Now, there's a woman that I was talking to a long time ago who wrote a book, Nina Rosner, and she wrote a book called The Respect Dare, and she claimed that when women got together, sometimes they talked about their boyfriends or their husbands in ways that they kind of made fun of them, they kind of complained about them. The women would get together and complain about their men, kind of put them down sometimes. Is that true, ladies? Let's just do a random sample. Is that true? Are you kidding me? Like, not me, but my friends sometimes do that. Yeah, I get it. Interesting that the Bible understood that when the gentleman in the relationship feels like his wife really doesn't respect him, that for some reason, whatever, that really, really hurts, and it really, really drives us apart. So this lady, Nina, as I was talking with her, she said, I'm going to write this book. She did it, and then it became a really good seller. She said, I've got to work with ladies and help them to understand the power that they have, that when they show respect to their husband in different ways, and she wrote another book that was like 101 ways to show respect or something, because it's become so difficult, and television shows don't help. They're always about how to kind of connive and manipulate your husband into doing things, or hide stuff from him, or make fun of him, and that can be funny. That's great comedy, but it's not a great marriage, is it? And so there she wrote that based on this whole idea. But it's just a way of expressing loving one another and loving your neighbor as you love yourself. What about kids? Let's put the kids on the hot seat. Ephesians 6, verse 6. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And all the parents said, amen. But guess what? We were all kids, weren't we? And so we still have parents that are living that are very godly people that sometimes give us advice, and sometimes they're right. You may be 40, 50, 60 years old, and once in a while, your parent says, this is what you really ought to do. You're like, doggone it. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment, with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. This is a New Testament passage, but where did they get that idea? The Old Testament. That's old school, long ago. Now, how do you honor your father and mother? Well, if they abused you, did horrible things to you, the way that you may honor them in that setting might be very different than somebody that's honoring their father and mother who showed love, compassion, self-sacrifice. The principle is the same. The application may be different. I've known folks where the best that they can do to show honor to their father or mother that mistreated them was to send them a birthday card, just say, I love you, I'm praying for you. And that's the best that they could do. But you know what? That was huge, because that was more than their other friends that didn't know Jesus may have ever done. Because his other friends may be trying to get back at that person, have revenge on that person, never ever can get past what was done to them. But the other person with Jesus may be saying, I'm not fully healed yet, but I'm trying. And I'm trying to honor. I'm trying to live this out. And it looks different, but the principle is the same. On the other hand, some of us, they had great nurturing parents. So one card once a year, that doesn't cut it, does it? Because that's not honoring to that relationship. It looks different, it's deeper, and it's more sustained. But is the principle wrong? Is it wrong? And when the parents are godly and they told us what to do, and we didn't do it, and then we found out, daggone it, like they were right, And that happens so often. So here you've got the principle. Ephesians 6, though. Now, this is to dads, but I think it's for parents as well. You can translate it fathers or parents. Do not exasperate your children. But man, it's fun. Now, you know what this looks like. There's a difference between tickling a kid and having fun and continuing to tickle the kid and it gets abusive. Have you seen people cross the line? I have. You may have in your past. You didn't realize, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, I'm still laughing, they're not. Wait. And that's just one little example, right? Exasperating your kids. If you put them down in front of other people, or if you just put them down at all, you're a loser. You're never going to make any difference. You're never going to grow up to be anything. if you disrespect them, you know what you're teaching them. You're teaching them that they're not worthy of respect. So then who do they hang out with? They hang out with other people that agree they're not really worth respect. Then they start dating people that agree, and they get mistreated. And then the parents are standing back going, why did they choose to hang out with that person? Well, let's check ourselves. Did we really help that kid to know that they're worth being protected and they're worth hanging out with people and dating people that will protect them and love them and cherish them and respect boundaries and have a healthy relationship? Did we do that? Sometimes we did, and then they just freely make the wrong decisions. But sometimes when we check ourselves, we say, wait a second. No, when I went off on them in front of everybody else, that somehow communicated to them that they're not worth being respected in other settings and with other people. And we step back and we say, wait, if I'm going to love them as I love myself, would I want to be berated or smacked in front of people or somehow put down on, made fun of? Yeah, everybody's laughing and the kids kind of, ha, ha. But it hurts, right? And we step back and we say, wait, if I'm going to love them as I love myself, I've got to hold myself to a different standard. Now, the positive side on this, I know that's a real downer. Nathan, where's the positive? Well, the positive is when you live this stuff out, it changes the trajectory of the entire family. I have a story about that. I had to look at my notes and remember how to spell my last name. My last name's Custer, right? C-U-S-T-E-R, okay? When we came over from Germany in the 1600s, most of them spelled with a K, Custer. If you look back farther in the records, at some point in time we kind of dropped the E, but it was the same name. It means the same thing, Custer, Custer. And then I didn't know this until I was looking this up for this sermon, that in German means one who cares for a church property. No joke. I had no idea, okay? Now, you think about how names develop, right? Miller, Baker, right? You know how that developed, right? Somebody was a baker, and then people were like, who do we have to talk to? Oh, we have to talk to Jan the baker, right? And then eventually it's Jan Baker, and then it keeps going on down through there. At some point in time, in the hills of Germany, back in the day when people were worshiping Thor and Orin, and they're praying to the trees, they're worried about their ancestors coming back. I mean, that Nordic kind of religion and stuff, and they're trying to, one family may go invade another family and rape and pillage and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know the ancient kind of ways of living back then, right? I mean, it was crazy. Some dude I'll call him Hans. Hans decides when a Christian missionary shows up, and this happened in the 300s in Germany, and then by the 400s, like even leaders are starting to convert to Christianity, and that Hans decided, for me and my family, this Jesus stuff makes sense. I'm gonna worship that one God who's in three persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And that name of that dude became synonymous with one who cares for church. And so when people say to me, hey, I bet you're just a Christian because your mom and dad were Christians. I used to say, because I'm an individual, right? I used to say, well, I looked at other religions, which I did, and I did all this research and really looking hard at atheism because I understand where those folks are coming from. Like I get it. And then I chose for myself, this faith. In a way I did, right? But my answer now would be as well, you think my parents had something to do with that? Oh, dude, it's way better than that. Like for 1,600 years, this has been our family tradition. Like somebody came out of the forest praying to some tree and decided, wait a second, no, the missionary's right, and I got to give my life to Jesus, and I got to follow Jesus, because seriously, truly, the family tradition goes back to that person saying, no more, we're not doing this anymore. That's crazy that you might be that person who says, my family is broken, but it stops today. It stops today. I'm not taking another drink. I'm not shooting up again. I'm not beating my kids like I got beat and like dad got beat. It stops today. Good grief, I had no idea I'd get emotional about that. I was fine in the first service, but it was because of somebody pulled the fire alarm right at this point. So evidently this is a really big deal and somebody needs to hear this. So Jesus had bread at the Seder meal. It's going to be the last meal that he had on earth before the death and resurrection, before he's going to be tortured. So he knows he's going to be tortured, and he's looking around at the guys at the table, and he's willing to be tortured for them because their sins are that bad, and so are ours, that we ought to be beaten for them. But he's like, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it for you. My body's going to be broken, and I'm doing this for you. And he offers them the bread and says, eat, and then feed on my body, right? And then he took the cup. So he's looking at it. It's like this red wine, which pours out and it stains stuff. You know what that's like. Well, so does your blood. And he says, this is the blood of the new covenant. It's a new relationship between God and you and me. And Jesus is like, okay, so I'm dying for you. You're that important. No matter what your mom or dad may have said or didn't say, or what other people have said to you, or what you even tell yourself, I'm telling you, God loves you, and Jesus is willing to die for you. And he raises from the dead and says, I really want you with me forever. And he does that for us. So then, the Christians later understood, when he said, do this in remembrance of me, we're going to do that. We're going to remember him, and we're going to connect with him and commune with him. Even if we're starting a new family tradition, we will love like he loves. So if that's you, then we invite you to take a piece of the bread and hold it, and we'll eat together in just a moment. God, would you bless the bread, bless the cups, and bless us with your presence. Amen.